"Get out of my house." Dad didn't even raise his voice. Just those 5 words, and everything fell apart. He stood there with that cold, blank stare that I'll never forget. Not angry, not sad, just done with me. Monica was behind him, arms folded, smirking like she'd finally won. "Good luck surviving, loser." The door slammed. My son's tiny hand gripped mine tighter. His stuffed bear was still inside. "My name is Morgan. I'm 32. That night, my father threw out me and my 3-year-old because my sister said I stole from them. $10,000 of emergency cash she claimed she found in my dresser. I tried to speak, but my voice disappeared. I didn't know then that the truth had a way of showing up on its own, and when it did, it would hit harder than any lie. Have you ever watched a family turn against you like strangers? The next morning, I woke up in a cheap motel room, my son's head resting on my arm. His small breath against my skin was the only thing keeping me from breaking. I kept hearing Dad's voice in my head over and over, "Get out of my house." I used to think there was nothing more permanent than a parent's love. Turns out, pride lasts longer. 2 months earlier, I'd moved back home after losing my job. It was supposed to be temporary, just until I could get back on my feet. Mom welcomed me, made space in the guest room, even left out my favorite mug. But Monica? She made it clear I didn't belong. Every meal turned into a reminder. She'd roll her eyes if Mom passed me the salt, sigh loud enough for everyone to hear when I asked for help with my son. Her words started small, little stabs hidden behind smiles. "Must be nice not to worry about bills," she'd say. Or, "Maybe I should quit my job too. Mom seems to love taking care of grown kids." I'd laugh it off, pretending it didn't sting, but it did. The truth is, I already felt guilty for needing help. I didn't need her to remind me. Mom kept peace by pretending not to notice. Dad stayed quiet, working long hours, avoiding the tension. But Monica wasn't done. She started asking questions about the family's finances, about the emergency fund Dad kept in the house. I didn't think much of it then. The day before it all exploded, she offered to watch my son while I ran to an interview. When I came home, she was in my room looking for her brush. Her smile was tight, forced. I didn't think to ask why she was even in there. That night, Dad came into my room holding an envelope. "You stole from us," he said. My heart dropped. $10,000, same handwriting as Dad's. I told him I didn't even know he had cash like that. He didn't listen. Mom stood frozen. Monica crossed her arms and whispered, "Guess blood doesn't mean loyalty." That's how it ended. Me and my son on the sidewalk, a trash bag of clothes, and silence where home used to be. Uncle Rick's house didn't feel real the first night. Everything was too quiet, too clean. The air smelled like cedar and rain. My son fell asleep on the couch, his small fingers still clutching the edge of his jacket. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't have to pretend I was okay. Rick didn't ask questions. He just looked at me, really looked, the way no one in my family had in a long time. Then he said, "You're safe now," and went to make tea like it was the most normal thing in the world. I cried that night, not loud, not dramatic, just the quiet kind that happens when you finally stop fighting. The next morning, I woke to the smell of pancakes. My son was laughing in the kitchen, syrup all over his chin, and Rick was sitting across from him, pretending to be a dinosaur. For a moment, the world didn't feel so cruel. When he finally asked what happened, I told him everything. Every word, every insult, every time Monica made me feel small for needing help. I told him about Dad's cold stare, about Mom's silence, and the way Monica looked when she found that envelope. I didn't sugarcoat anything. Rick listened without interrupting. When I finished, he leaned back, rubbed his jaw, and said quietly, "I've been waiting for something like this." I frowned. "What do you mean?" He told me he'd had a bad feeling for months, that the family business, his and Dad's, had started bleeding money, missing funds, unpaid invoices, strange transfers under Monica's name. "Your sister's been pulling strings she doesn't understand," he said. "And your parents? Too blind to see it." Then he picked up his phone. His voice shifted, calm but firm. "Freeze access to all dividend accounts," he said. "Audit starts today." I just sat there, clutching my coffee, realizing what he was doing. He wasn't just defending me. He was unraveling the truth. The next 2 days were strangely calm. I stayed busy around the house, washing dishes, folding laundry, playing with my son in the garden. But beneath that quiet was tension, thick and electric. Rick was constantly on the phone, pacing through rooms, talking numbers I didn't understand. Every time I asked what was happening, he'd smile faintly and say, "Soon." At night, when the house went still, I couldn't help but picture Monica sitting in our parents' living room, twisting the story, turning me into a villain. Maybe Mom would be crying again. Maybe Dad would just sit there, blank, the way he always did when things got messy. But this time, something was different. For once, I wasn't the one defending myself. I wasn't the one chasing their approval. Rick's calm was contagious. By the third night, I realized I wasn't angry anymore, just tired. Tired of being the one who always had to explain, to fix, to forgive. I tucked my son in, kissed his forehead, and whispered, "We're okay now." I didn't know it yet, but Rick's quiet phone calls had already set something in motion, something that would make every lie Monica told crumble faster than she ever imagined. By the third day, Rick came home earlier than usual. He looked calm, but there was a sharp focus in his eyes I hadn't seen before. He set his keys on the counter and said, "Get your coat. We're going to your parents' house." My stomach twisted. "Rick, no. They don't want me there. They made that clear." He shook his head. "They believed a liar over their own daughter. It's time they see what truth looks like." We drove in silence. My son was asleep in the back seat, his head tilted against the window. When we pulled into the driveway, I froze. Mom's car was there. Monica's SUV too, but Dad's truck was gone. The front door was cracked open like someone had left in a hurry. Rick told me to stay in the car. "This part isn't for you," he said, his tone firm but gentle. Then he walked straight to the house, shoulders squared like a man stepping into a boardroom. From the car, I could hear fragments, the sound of the door slamming, then Monica's voice, high and panicked. "You can't do that. You can't just cut us off." Then Mom's crying. Something broke, then silence. When Rick came back, he wasn't angry. He wasn't even smug, just calm. He opened the passenger door and said, "It's over." I stared at him. "What do you mean?" He took a breath. "The audit came through this morning. Monica's been using the company account to pay off personal debts, credit cards, a failed loan. When she realized it would be traced, she tried to cover it up, planted the same cash she stole in your drawer." The words hit me like cold water. What? Rick nodded. "Same amount, same envelope. Your father's emergency fund. It was hers all along." I couldn't speak. My chest felt tight, but not from pain, from disbelief. All this time, I thought I'd lost everything because of her lie. Turns out she was just trying to bury her own mess. Rick's voice softened. "They're cut off now. No more access to family funds, no more dividends. They'll have to figure things out on their own." I looked back at the house, the place that used to mean safety, and felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, just an empty kind of quiet. Rick glanced at me. "You don't have to do anything, Morgan. The truth already did the work." As we drove away, I watched the house shrink in the rearview mirror. Part of me wanted to cry, but another part, the stronger one, just breathed. That night, Rick made spaghetti. He didn't mention the confrontation. My son fell asleep at the table, his head on his arm. When I carried him upstairs, I realized something strange. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like I had to prove myself to anyone. Back at that house, everything was unraveling, and for once, I wasn't the one breaking. The next morning felt lighter, like the air itself had shifted. I woke up before my son and just sat there, watching sunlight crawl across the wall. For the first time in months, I didn't feel that heavy ache in my chest. My son stirred, turned over and whispered, "Mommy, pancakes?" I smiled. "Yeah, baby, pancakes." Downstairs, Rick was already making coffee. He looked calm, but his eyes carried that quiet focus again. "Step 1's complete," he said, scrolling through his phone. "They're cut off. No accounts, no dividends. Step 2, full audit." I didn't ask what that meant. I just nodded, because the truth was already doing what I never could. By noon, my phone started buzzing. First a text from Mom. "Please, can we talk?" Then Monica. 4 missed calls, 5, 6. I let them ring. Rick caught me staring at the screen. "Don't answer," he said. "Let silence do the talking." That afternoon, he called me into his office. On the desk was a manila folder and his laptop. He pressed play. The screen showed a grainy black and white video, the hallway outside the bedrooms at my parents' house. And then I saw her, Monica. She looked both ways, holding the envelope. She opened my door, stepped inside, and slipped it into my dresser drawer. It was the same one Dad later found, the evidence that got me thrown out. My breath caught. "You had this?" Rick nodded slowly. "Installed after a family heirloom went missing. Never took it down." I leaned back, staring at the screen. I thought I'd feel vindicated, but all I felt was tired. Just bone-deep exhaustion. Rick turned to me. "Do you want me to send it to them?" I shook my head. "No. Let her sit with her story a little longer. Let her see what it feels like when no one believes her." He smiled faintly. "You've got more restraint than I ever did." That night, things started to unravel faster than either of us expected. Monica tried to move money from one of the frozen accounts. Declined. The contractors renovating my parents' house walked off the job. Deliveries stopped. Half-built walls stood open to the wind. Even the pool Monica loved to show off online was nothing but a pit of cement and mud. By evening, she was calling again, 8 times. Then her husband left a message about how family should forgive, and everyone makes mistakes. I deleted it. Rick made dinner like nothing was happening. He and my son built paper airplanes and sent them gliding through the living room. The laughter echoed softly against the walls. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like the broken one. Their world was collapsing on the weight of their lies, and I hadn't lifted a finger. I tucked my son in that night and stood by the window, looking out at the quiet garden. Somewhere across town, Monica was probably unraveling, but here, everything was calm. The truth had found its way home, and I didn't need to say a word. 2 days passed in a strange, peaceful silence, the kind that comes after a storm when the air feels clean again. I spent the mornings in Rick's garden, watching my son chase butterflies and laugh so hard he almost fell. Every sound of his joy reminded me that peace didn't have to be loud. It could be gentle, steady, and ours. By the 3rd day, the quiet broke. Mom showed up first. She didn't ring the bell, just stood outside the gate, clutching her purse like she wasn't sure she belonged there. I watched her from the upstairs window. She looked smaller somehow, older. After 10 minutes, she left without a word. That night, Rick handed me an envelope from my parents. Inside was a letter from Dad. 3 pages of half apology and half pride, ending with a request for money until things settle. I didn't even finish reading it. I handed it back to Rick, and he said simply, "You don't owe them anything." The next evening, Monica came. She looked wrecked. Eyes red, hair unwashed, her voice trembling. "Everything's falling apart," she said. "The house, our credit cards, my job. Dad's blaming me for everything." Then, through the shaking, she confessed. She admitted planting the envelope, lying, framing me because she was tired of being the forgotten daughter. Rick didn't say a word. He just pulled out a printed still from the video. Monica, caught in the act. She froze. "You had this the whole time?" "We waited," Rick said quietly. "Not for revenge, just to let the truth do what lies never can." She asked me what I wanted. I told her, "Nothing. I'm done wanting from people who don't see me." She cried, but I didn't. I just walked upstairs, tucked my son into bed, and listened to the soft rhythm of his breathing. That was all the closure I needed. A month later, Rick handed me a lease to his guest house. "Rent-free for a year," he said. "You deserve to breathe again." Now, mornings are slow and kind. My son wakes up smiling. I have a remote job, a small garden, and peace that doesn't depend on anyone's permission. I didn't get revenge. I got freedom. And sometimes, when I drive past my parents' house and my son asks who lives there, I just say, "Some people we used to know." Have you ever had to choose peace over being right?